Welcome to Ravens Whispers, the podcast where meaningful conversations inspire meaningful change. I'm your host, Mark Pearson. Each episode brings together leaders, advocates, veterans, gamers, first responders, and everyday people with extraordinary stories, all united in one belief. No one should face life's battles alone. Our mission is simple: to educate, to inspire, to build stronger communities, and all above to help stop the stigma surrounding mental health. Thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Today with me, I have Tori McNeil, Christopher Allen, and Harry Weeks. Today, we're going to talk about the topic of gaming saved my life. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Pretty good. Happy to be here.
Good.
So, what is this? This is episode 5, I think. Yeah, we're episode 5. And, you know, I think this is a pretty important topic just because Troa basically started with gaming, right? And, it saved my life. Troa was created in my own pain in the sense and trying to get away from, toxicity. So, this is a very, I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation, you know. So I guess we'll go ahead and just start with, the basics, I know I play video games, you know. Who else plays video games?
I myself am a pretty decent, I would say a pretty decent gamer. I've been playing since, adolescence, but I think the term gaming saved my life is a bit vague in the extent. I'd say the community that gaming provides is what essentially created a bridge to connection or connectivity, and I think that's literally what helped me kind of grow, connecting with people. People have the ability to grow both professionally, personally, emotionally, and really connect. Whether that's on Battlefield 6, whether you're playing Call of Duty, whether you're doing Minecraft or things like that. But for me, I've met some really amazing close friends that I've been with for friends that I've been friends with for many years, and we still communicate, we still connect. Um, I'm actually a godfather to one of my really close gaming friends, kids, and that connection right there for gaming is, we started off, of course, playing something that we uh, both enjoyed with, which was, basically Call of Duty. And then next thing we're talking, hey, how's life? How's growing up? And, from the times of being a teenager to the times of being, an adult. Of course, you lose connection, but throughout that time, you just kind of pick up where you left off. And I think when it comes to friendships, that type of communication um, is kind of needed because your community is where you are, whether that is virtual, whether that is at work, whether that is home. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think Harry was going to say something too, but to your point, Tori, yeah. Um, I think I think a lot of gamers in general they find as they are going through and we'll call them newbie gamers, right? When the newbie gamers start and they start to like play these, Call of Duty, Battlefield, Space Engineers, Minecraft, they start to notice there are the the players that they can go to, I feel, but they don't know how to approach that whole thing. Is most gamers that I feel that come into Troa are very quiet. And then once they get to understand our who we are and what we do, I think that changes the atmosphere. That's the whole point of creating a safe environment and a safe place and safe servers, and just a safe area to talk about whatever you want. Because a lot of gamers, I think when we grew up, a lot of it was escape from a lot of stuff that was going on in life. Harry, what about you, buddy?
Ah, where do I begin? Part of my part of my thing is I, as people probably do not know, I have very severe Asperger's. It is hard for me to it is hard for me to communicate with people a lot of the times. And it threw me through I don't know how many waves of severe depression just growing up. It's I look back and that was just a nightmare. Thankfully, I do a little bit better now, but it will never leave. And for me, I'd say just gaming is just one small thread of connection I can actually have to people where I can actually talk about it.
Yeah, so definitely, thank you for, sharing that and being open. Like what is, I guess, one thing that drew you to Troa? Why do you stay in Troa? What makes Troa so I guess good?
For me, I see Troa as a community that's really there to help other people, like people who've gone through what I've dealt with. I've almost done the horrible, but thanks to games, I've pulled out of that. I look into this and I see it as a great way for people who have these really hard times in their life and they're like they still love video games. A lot of us do like video games, and it's just a little shine of hope for people.
What I Yeah, I so what is one thing that also for you, like, because I know it took me forever, just so the audience knows, to get this guy to, kind of come out of his shell and show that leadership potential that he actually has. Um, what do you think that, now from when you joined Choa to now, how do you think the players see you, and how do you think that the players in Troa gaming, that are new, how do you think they feel about, hey, I'm Yushudo, and when they meet you?
Um, I would say a lot of people first come in to the server see for just other forms of connection and everything else. And I've kind of put it on myself to sort of be there to pop up, say hello to everyone. Even inside of video games, I'll just come by, say, "Hey, how you doing? I like the ship that you're building in Space Engineers," or something else. Sort of be a person that I can just make other people happy. And I've been with Troa for over a year now. I've seen it come. I've seen it grow. I've seen it go back a little bit. I've seen it grow again. The For people, I'd say a lot of people here sort of look up to me as one of the managers that helps keep everyone happy and running, sort of like the servers. And I don't know what else to say about that.
I mean, you put it very well. I mean, that's one of the reasons, I kept pushing you to be, our Troa gaming head, just because the potential that everybody sees in you. And also the other stuff is everybody always goes to you. And, people talk to you about things as well, which is great. It's always good to have that kind of open communication, with gamers, because that kind of segues into the next topic is Trello uses gaming as a conduit to connect with individuals, whether they're at their lowest, whether they're at their highest, whether they're at wherever, because gaming brings people together. Gaming brings friendships, like Tori said, Godfather, it brings meaningful connections, and it brings meaningful aspects to your life that a lot of people just don't realize. And there's still a stigma with people and gaming. So like for me, I have a long list of friends that I have, worldwide, that I've made with gaming, right? To this day, I have friends that are still in Australia that I talk to, that I've been a part of, the life growth and cycle in their lives of their kids and of all that. So when I hear somebody that is not smart to gaming say that, oh, you're just a bunch of adults that, are playing video games, and why do you do that? It's a waste of time. And then that's where Troa comes in, and we can be the educational aspect of being like, well, not necessarily. So, and then I think that we've been doing that for these past 2 years that we've been a nonprofit. So with Gaming Saved My Life, gaming is kind of it, it's an escape for people. It's a way to acknowledge your depression. It's a way to acknowledge that you just don't want to talk to people as well. Some people play games because they just don't want to be near people. Introverts, there's a lot of introverts on the internet. It's also a way for people to um, be themselves, their them actual selves, instead of putting a show on in front of whoever they're at home. It does a lot of stuff, and you know I think Tori probably sees a lot of it, you know just because of his background, in the mental health aspect. It's like, you know hi, I'm Tori. I don't know if that's how he says it, but he might say it like that. Hi, I'm Tori. Do you want to play a video game with me? That comes off a little creepy, right? That comes off a little creepy.
That is not at all how I sound. It's like the furthest from how I sound. And I definitely, one thing is, I think when it comes to gaming, there's a lot of different aspects for it. Like let's talk about what gaming actually is. Gaming, it is
What
more
is
than
it?
just pressing buttons, right? Gaming is more than pressing buttons. It's an interactive
Really?
environment
It's
where
not.
people can really like solve problems. People can make decisions. They can take on roles. They communicate, compete, create, um, build relationships. That's the most important thing about gaming, right? When we look at gaming from a lot of different sides, it allows people to create a place to go, to create an environment where someone can be in a place where they can kind of do what they want to do. During a difficult time in any type of gaming, someone can really go to a physical place. During VR, virtual reality, someone can be immersive. There's immersive gaming, and it's also created a lot of access to people. For sorry, not to people, for people. You know, we talk about that. I really wish people would have a better understanding, because I think when people say the term gaming, they think, oh, this person is playing buttons, or this person's just getting online and they're playing buttons and it's for fun. It doesn't do anything. When in fact, gaming has been proven to help reduce isolationism. The CDC identified that connection to community in other social institutions are protective factors associated with lowering suicide risk. You know, that comes back to a lot of different studies which are continuously growing. You know, back in 2024, I think the Pew Research Center identified that it was like 72% of teenage players said spending time with others was a reason that they played, and about 47 of them said that they had made an online friend literally through video gaming. Now, going up to adulthood, this is the part where gaming comes into place. We have people who are growing up, millennials who grew up in the gaming industry, who grew up in the gaming um, world, understanding that I have an open environment, right? I have the ability to communicate, connect with somebody who has a completely different background or may have the similar background to me, right? And then that's what really creates that type of belonging. We have similar interests. I have a protective shield in a way. You know, that's the online where I don't have to worry about, let's say, oh, I have to be back home before the streetlights come back on, or before the streetlights come on. That was a traditional saying growing up. You know, okay, playtime's over when the streetlights come on. Um, you know, when you go into gaming, giving people as a role, people are often needed for something specific. You're doing a task-driven objective. Like that's the key component there. Whether you're playing a game by yourself, whether you're playing as a game as a group, or anything, you have a responsibility. And a lot of the time, it teaches a lot of people about how to engage others. Um, and it's also extremely powerful for people or individuals who are also neurodivergent, or individuals who may suffer from certain disabilities as well. That personal connection allows people to engage in a much safer way because gaming can, again, create communities to experience that competence and to contribute to some type of shared purpose. And I think if we were to have a real solid understanding, you know, parents, youth, you know, everyone just understanding how exactly it's impactful, you 100% can have a shared understanding that, oh, this is more than just a video game. There's research that goes into games. There's understanding how certain colors impact how you think. There's research that goes into how a person engages with the storyline, how that creates an emotion or how that creates visualization. There's a lot, and so I think that you know the gaming industry, more importantly, you know, it's a huge industry. It's larger than both the entertainment and the you know, and the music industry combined. 3.4 billion people. That's 47% of the world are gamers themselves. So when we look at gaming, I hope a lot of people just don't consider it as just this is child's play or something like that, because it's shown that it's growing, especially with esports. It's shown that it's growing, especially with how people engage online. And now there's even more stronger safeguards than before, and it's only going to continue to get stronger and more research. But that's a very long-winded answer.
Very, very long-winded answer. That's the Tory answer, honestly.
Yeah.
No, to what you said about, you know, neurodivergent and people with disabilities, I actually made a really good friend for, gosh, I think back in 2015, before TROA, before I even had the concept of doing TROA. I knew an individual, and he had a very hard time of pretty much explaining what his disability was. And I just told him it is okay, you know, like, you know, I'm not gonna not like you because, you know, you don't have limbs or or something of that nature, right? You know, just being truly bluntly forward like I am with people. And it's probably one of the longest friendships, you know, I've had in my life, besides, you know, my best friend, you know, but that's a whole nother another story and another podcast. Um, but I think that people with disabilities in general can go to gaming as a avenue to escape the negativity that they experience on a day-to-day basis. because people just are not nice. People are not nice. People, there's not this world is not nice. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what any of the Christians or Catholics or whatever they say. It's not. When you are struggling to do stuff in life and people are making fun of you, or you have a disability and you have one of the disabilities that's considered a stigma, I just think that the world's not nice. And we as Troa are hopefully trying to help humanity in that aspect. That is one of the long-term missions that I have is we help humans, as many as humans as we can, and then we also help humanity. You know, uh, whatever we can do, whatever we can offer, right? But I digress. The individuals that are very like cut off from the world. Gaming is their outlet. Gaming is where they make friends. Gaming is where they can do stuff because it's not necessarily that they're afraid of the rejection, I feel, but I feel that it's more of they feel that they can be themselves in the gaming world than they can in the real world because mm, it's somebody that is miles or millions of miles, whatever you want to say, right? They're far away. There's no way that they're going to judge that individual. But gaming is probably one of the most gaming is one of the most toxic environments as well. It depends on what games you play. You play Call of Duty. Okay, that
Yeah.
game I've broken like 3 controllers over it just because of how how angry I get in it. Battlefield. Okay, no, it's a little bit better, but there's still a lot of people that you know um like to use those colorful words, and they're like 10 or 12 years old. So, the parents, especially in my I'm gonna say my younger years, but like when I was in my early 20s and early 30s, I'm getting on to video games and I'm hearing kids in the background, cursing and using profanity. And I'm like, what is going on? I had an argument with a mom one time on a live stream. I probably still have it, but like she came in, kid was cussing us out, and we had a party chat. We had like I don't know 3 or 4, 5 people in it, and they're all telling kid to shut that fuck up, like stop, like you don't need to be in here. The mom gets on and she starts losing herself, and that was a moment that mom probably shouldn't have done that. She should have just pulled her kid off because it was a pretty bad situation. When you have a whole bunch of random people that are in a voice chat on Xbox. I wasn't doing the PC thing at that time, but you know it you can't control people, and you shouldn't definitely not have your kid playing a rated M game.
I think what you shared is really important, but it also shows that it was a different time in gaming. And I think what's really important to know is that gaming is advancing. Now, you mentioned a few specific games and so forth. But those type of games are naturally competitive. And by the way, I'm not admonishing anyone here when I say that gaming has changed. Um, a lot of trust and safety professionals across the gaming industry have created advancements such as putting in the voice to text, putting in the monitoring of language. One of the biggest changes when you talk about Call of Duty was a simple reminder to let people know that your audio is recorded. Changes how an individual may interpret or view how exactly what they say because they know that what they're saying is or available to be shared or shown. Some of those improvements also include how people view connecting from online to offline, taking individuals off platforms to communicate when it becomes an adult and a child, as an example. We talk about how the Anti-Defamation League reported back in, I think it was 2021, there was like 80% of adults 18 to 45 had experienced some type of harassment. And then I think it was back in 2022 that the report found that more than 4 out of 5 adults experienced harassment, even more severely, in one of their surveys. And I want to say is that the biggest change is not that toxicity has been solved. It's that the change in players and the change in research developers and a lot of these regulators are treating safety as a design and a governance issue rather than simply telling targets or people to mute their microphone. And more importantly, people are also engaging and people are speaking up. People are noticeably saying, hey, that's not right. And that is a cultural shift. In literally a matter of about 10 years, something happened. People recognize the violence, people recognize the impact. People recognize that there are autism free or specific types of games where an individual can say, hey, I have autism, please be nice. Or hey, I have a disability, or people are encouraging. Now, not to say that that won't always happen, but you 100% can guarantee that there are people who will either try and take advantage of that or people who actually speak up. But that toxicity is also spread through groups. It's not an individual personality problem. Behavior can spread when a group reinforces that or treats that as normal. And so when people repeatedly hear abuse without anyone challenging it, they may learn that that is simply how players are expected to behave. But in reality, a lot of the times, that's not really the case. So it doesn't mean that everyone's exposed to toxicity behavior are going to simply copy it. It just means that group norms and repeated exposure have that ability to really influence.
So you said a lot, and I'm going to unload a lot on that.
Mhm.
So pretty much, I think there was a massive lawsuit that was against Battlefield or EA, and I don't know who makes Call of Duty anymore. I think it's Activision or I don't know who makes it anymore. But once that class action lawsuit was completed, this was like 5 or 6 years, maybe 7 years ago, we noticed a shift in the dynamics of, like you said, more healthy gaming to less toxicity. That is when the whatever the titles were that came out. I think it was Battlefield. I don't remember the Battlefield. What was it? Battlefield 6. Battlefield, was it Battlefield 1? I think it was Battlefield 1. Battlefield 1 introduced recording into their actual platform, and then followed Call of Duty as well. They had to do that not just because they wanted to do it; they were forced to do it because of the lawsuit that came against them for people being harassed or people that were actually taking their lives. There were a lot of things that were going on back then, and then the dynamics have changed now to where individuals that get caught doing that, now they're banned on the spot for life. So the gaming, or the gaming industry has shifted from, well, we don't want that much responsibility to watch our players, we just want to make a game and let them play it, right, to now they got whole teams of individuals that are monitoring for harassment and that are monitoring for vulgarity and all that kind of stuff in chats, in voice chats, in game servers, all that. Now, when you start talking about individuals that are getting caught and then that are getting kind of some of the, we'll say, Twitch streamers, these Twitch streamers that go in and get caught and then they're banned for 24 hours. That is where now Twitch needs to get caught up with the gaming industry, because Twitch is causing issues as well right now when it comes to toxicity as well. There are streamers out there that you can watch. And Tori, I know you know what I'm talking about. I don't know how many streamers you watch. I watch all kinds of stuff. But they are sitting there, making fun of individuals that they're playing with even if it's scripted, even if whatever they're doing, it's still not acceptable in society anymore. The culture has shifted. And if you continue to allow that culture to continue to do that, then there's going to be more issues as we continue to progress. We're going to degress instead of progress. So I think that, what was that? Helldivers? That game Helldivers. Helldivers is a prime example. Helldivers is a great game, but it's a very competitive game. But it also has introduced some issues for that developer because they didn't do what Call of Duty and Battlefield did with their systems. They just created a system where you could report a player. Now, let's say I have 2,000 followers on Twitch, right? Yeah, I got 2,000, 3,000 followers on Twitch. I'm a up and coming Twitch streamer, and the next thing I know, somebody pisses me off, right? I can then tell all those people that are watching me, go report this player. So those are the kinds of issues that are still happening that these organizations, they're not taking care of. And it's just more and more people are becoming depressed, or are committing the suicide, and or just they stop gaming because they're tired of it. So that's what I got for that.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying. I think when you talk about people who have depression, or people who attempt suicide, or who have who unfortunately die of or by suicide, it becomes something where it's really, really impactful. And a lot of gamers a lot of gamers have their own struggles. And I don't know why I use the term gamers specifically in this case, because
People.
It's people. These are
People
gamers
first.
and that's my motto. People first, mission always. And the reason I say that is that there's a lot of legal and regulations that have changed. Especially when it comes to children. And there's also a lot of legal and reputational changes that have affected that. More importantly, because of serious misconduct. Now, I'm not going to call out any organizations. That's not my goal here. But I'll say there are some really, really, really amazing organizations that are working to advance awareness. There is the Trust and Safety. I forget the exact name, but it's the Trust and Safety Partnership.
Discord.
No, not for Discord. It's an organization. I'll remember it later. But there's the Trust and Safety Professionals Association. That's it. They've created online training for people who are community moderators who work inside Trust and Safety, who have a responsibility to their organizations. They've created free training that allows individuals to take advantage of, to understand, hey, what exactly am I supposed to do? What are these consequences? What are the training that's required to that? In fact, at TROA, part of the mental health division, we've taken advantage of that and actually encouraged and required a lot of our personnel who are engaging with the community, especially when it comes to Discord, to learn about the trust and safety, to learn about how the community level risk impacts, and so forth. A number of our team have also taken advantage of the behavioral threat assessment management courses that are taught by the Department of Homeland Security. So therefore, people have an understanding about the violence or the pathway to violence. So when individuals start to becoming targeted, and so forth. So there's a lot of actual research. There's a lot of training. There's a lot of just understanding about how the threat landscape is changing. There's also a number of amazing professionals who are doing research on how extremism is being brought up. How, because part of bringing somebody into a community is where do they find that sense of belonging? Is that belonging understanding how MILSIM, what we call military simulation groups, where people learn about, hey, here's an environment where I can learn about military tactics and learn about that. To just sometimes just mental health, organizations such as Healthy Gamer, um, um, and working with organizations such as the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and directing people towards that, or the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So a lot of organizations are actually preaching and teaching other people about mental health awareness and where to find that community. And sometimes having that conversation specifically is really what's needed. And so what I really want to say is ultimately is that the direction of gaming is just continuously changing. And there's a lot of organizations who are working hard to ensure that people are informed, people are aware, but also that there's appropriate resources that are needed. Um, Twitch is taking advantage of making sure that they have moderators and content creators. Discord is doing the same. You can talk about how Xbox is organizing their trust and safety professionals, and across the board. If you just simply look at the term trust and safety, you'll see there's an influx, and that goes beyond gaming. That goes beyond gaming. That literally goes into any type of technology platform related. So that's one thing I would also highlight.
Yeah, so I think in general, yes, the gaming world is evolving, it is changing, it's great. Um it is very sad though that it took a lot of things to happen before these organizations really started to help in the sense. Um and I think one of the things like for Troa and education, that's one of the things that we'll be doing. We have gaming know your arsenal, that is a training that Tori and his team. Tori is our mental health lead head. He's the head of mental health for the organization, so that's why he knows so much. Well, that's why he knows everything. His gaming name is Heimdall. So if you look at him now and then you look at Heimdall, he thinks that he's Heimdall.
To clarify, I do not know everything. I mean, never. I want to say I'm a continuous learner. I love learning about new things. I love connecting with
Oh,
new
he's
people.
offline. You're offline, so I can't show your wonderful picture of Heimdall.
Thank you for not. But no, actually, Heimdall just comes from. I actually love Heimdall in Thor, and Idris Alba is actually one of my favorite actors. So
I
shout
still
out.
think he should have been Bond. I'm just saying he should have been Bond.
Absolutely.
They should have made him Bond, and we should have been already had in like 3 or 4 movies with him, and they would have been freaking awesome.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, congratulations, at least to him. I know he was knighted about a month or two ago. So he was knighted as part of that. So that was very, 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 very cool. But anyways, I do want to highlight, one last few thing is that I have recognized that trust and safety has shifted from a lot of the times of what used to be deleting bad net messages after the fact to really designing systems that identify risks, protect users, and document a lot of decisions. And it's interesting to know that there are people who are. It's good to know that there are people who are actively doing such to really escalate serious harms responsibly. We learned about doxing, how impactful that is, where an individual, calls the police or makes a serious threat or
Swatting.
Sorry, dox. Yes, swatting. Correction. So when we talk about gaming and swatting, the impact there is swatting has an impact. It did have an impact on people. When we talk about doxing and we talk about releasing of people's personal information, we talk about how serious that can be to individuals. And, there's a lot of people that are taking advantage of making sure that people are being safe, especially online.
Chris, you got anything? Been quiet.
Well, those that have watched previous episodes know how extensive I am into gaming. I say that very sarcastically. So I'll tell you, I'll put it in reference. So, whenever I reference gaming, a game, you talked about e-gaming. So I relate it to sports. So the last time I was playing video games was when Pele and Ronaldo were famous, way back in the day, back in the 80s and early 90s. And, it was, so the basic principle is the same, right? So you'd have a group of people that like certain games, and it creates a community, it creates a purpose. But back then, gaming was about, getting to the next level, about getting to the, usually back then, games had a limit. So getting to the final level, and then once you get to the final level, getting there as quickly as possible. But there was always a limit to it. And, whenever I went in the military in 88, I didn't play any gaming. Arcades were big back then, but, or a personal game station, at home. But after I went in the military in 88, I did not, get into gaming anymore. But I've still watched it. So I played soccer, growing up in school. And again, whenever I, left high school and went into the military, I stopped playing soccer. So now the reason why I mentioned the sports analogy is, even though I am not, in the gaming community, I'm a spectator, right? So I still like to see how gaming has changed over the years, and we've mentioned all those changes. I'm not going to go back into them. Y'all have already described what a lot of things that have happened, and even legislation has changed how gaming is today. But at the core, it's about community. It's about connection. You talk about, I've heard y'all talk about how, gaming, saves your life. And, you mentioned, not saying gamers, but, they're people first, right? Well, not only are they people first, one of the biggest factors into staying safe from suicide is connection, right? And so however you build that connection, we're in the middle, well, not in the middle, we're at the tail end of the World Cup championship right now. And so whether it's, soccer is your way to connect with other people, American football, tennis, baseball, the gaming community, different types of games that people play, or, if you're just part of a fan base of a particular player, whatever it takes to build that connection, I think we can all agree that at the end of the day, that's what's important. And even in Discord, and especially how we do Discord in Troa, it's a safe space to build those connections. And that's not the same, throughout all of the internet, throughout all of the Discord, world. So, building connections, building safe spaces, building ways that, purpose, right? So there are folks that are never going to play a physical sport, but in esport, that's where they can thrive. And you talked about, personas, and, I won't even say that people hide behind them, because saying somebody hides behind a persona and a name is like somebody in sports, when they put on the uniform, that's a persona. So whenever you're putting on a physical uniform whether you're putting on a personality when you're in the gaming world, that's how, in my opinion, that's how people, cope in life. Not that anybody, wants to be, watched 24/7, but a lot of times, our public face that we put out in the community is not the same face that we have, in our private life. And I think a lot of times that's probably a good thing, because you cannot be under the microscope all the time. You have to have a way to escape. You have to have a way to find a way in your own world, right, to decompress. You have extroverts, you have introverts, and you have the whole spectrum of everything in between. Some people really thrive on being in the spotlight. Some, it's a very draining thing to be in the spotlight. So whatever you need to do to recharge your own batteries, whatever you need to do to build those connections, physically, mentally speaking, that's what you need to do. Now, we don't have time to get into it. It could be a whole other episode. But if you're using the gaming world to completely escape from society, I think that takes it to the extreme. I think you can disconnect so much that you start to lose connections to those around you, right? So if your only way to exist is to be behind a persona, to not have any kind of connection, in the real world or online, then for me, that is a time to pause in your own life and see where you are mentally. We always ask the question, how are you doing? And people say, I'm fine. But, how are you really doing? If you're using this platform of the computer world to completely escape from everything, I would urge you, especially if you're having thoughts of suicide, to find ways to connect with those around you. And if you feel you're in imminent danger of dying by suicide, in America anyway, we have 988. In other countries, they have similar numbers now. But in America, dial 988, start that connection. And if you're a veteran, dial 988 and press 1. So, I know I kind of really took it way, way, way old school, but whether it's old school or today, the basic principle is the same. And it's about building those connections.
110% agree. Absolutely. And I mean, you definitely nailed on a lot of really good topics. You know, gaming saved my life, because it allowed me to, connect with people that I didn't think I would be able to connect with, during my darkest moments. It allowed me to be very open and honest about things. It was kind of like my therapy, right? Like music is also my therapy, but it's also some people's therapy. And then gaming is another therapy that a lot of people use as well. Um, and as Tori would say, we are not clinicians. We are not, we are nothing like that. We are just, having a conversation about how gaming saved our lives. Um, so that's how gaming, saved my life. What about you, Tori? You muted yourself.
I say that when we talk about gaming, and therapy, well, gaming per se isn't therapy for some people. The DSM-5, for people who have recognized it, right? Ordinary gaming isn't therapy. It's just it. But what it is, you can be an addiction. It can be used as a way to provide peer support. It can be used as a way to build a bridge and connect with individuals. In my situation, connecting with people who had similar values and had similar lived experiences. And to do that responsibly, it's really about building an environment where you can have a conversation with someone who has similar lived experience. You know, we use gaming, for example, as to support social connection. We use it to provide that belonging. We use it to advocate and educate individuals about mental health awareness and more responsibly, responsible peer engagement. You know, it can be therapeutic for someone without being therapy. I think that's it in a nutshell. In my way, and very, very clearly and directly, how did gaming save my life? It connected me with people who provided that sense of belonging a lot of the times when I, at points in time, did not feel like I belonged. A friend of mine at a point in time, very, very dark in my back, said, "Hey, just checking up on you. How are you doing?" That simple check was one of the most important checks ever for me. And it comes at a time where a lot of people were going through difficult moments. And how do you cope with somebody who's going, I mean, how does someone cope when they're going through a difficult moment? Do they reach out? Is there someone that's going to check up on them? Is there someone that's going to support them? You know, and this is actually before 988. This is before 988 existed, and a lot of that times, the number that you had to reach out to was 1-800-273-TALK. I didn't even know 1-800-273-TALK existed. I knew that I had my pastor, I knew that I had my friend, I knew that I had my parents. And at that point in time, when I was really young, that was a challenge. That was an understanding to realize. And so what ended up happening was someone who was just a really good friend of mine was like, "Hey, I haven't spoken to you in a while. How you doing?" And I just let out, say, "Hey, I'm going through a rough patch." And so what ended up happening was that individual and I still actually remain really good friends. And what ends up happening is other people start building that connection. People start saying, "Hey, we'll follow up. We'll hang out. Let's do something." People start building safety plans. And for me, one of the big things to know is that people build safety plans. And I think it's really, really interesting to note that getting on a video game can be part of your safety plan. It means talking to your friend can be part of your coping skill that's building your safety plan. In fact, 988 Lifeline, created a website, Vibrant. The administrator for 988, for the 988 grant, created a website called, safespace.vibrant.org. And I have to say, it's one of the most aesthetically clean and pleasing websites that helps build, honestly, almost everything to help somebody cope when they're going through a really difficult time. And I've shared that with, I don't even know, hundreds of people right now. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the times coping skills and mechanisms used to be simply, here's a PDF, here's an old website, and here's your box breathing, and that's it. Now there's music, there's sounds, there's drills, there's exercises, there's ways to really communicate. There's ways to help you boost your self-confidence. And I share that with a lot of people, both in my personal and in my professional life. And to take it on back to gaming, I think I've probably shared that with well over hundreds of gamers myself. The people that I've just randomly connected with or just have a conversation with. It's definitely inside the Trello website, not the Trello website, it's definitely inside the Trello Discord. And it's definitely as a resource. But that's a very, once again, long-winded answer to how gaming saved my life. But for me, gaming created the environment for me to connect with someone, and for people who have similar lived experiences, and create a responsible, safe connection for individuals to grow.
Very well said. And yeah, long-winded, but definitely need it, right? That's what our listeners like. What about you, Chris? We're closing up. How'd gaming save your life?
Well, I mean, now, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it really is about the connections, right? And so, and gaming saving someone's life, saving my life is not a one-time thing, right? It's having those connections, maintaining those connections. I'll be honest, guys don't like talking, about, what's going on, personally. They don't like talking about mental health. But sports, esports, Discord, Twitch gives a space. I'm glad you mentioned the safe space on Vibrant. I had forgotten about that. But all of these technologies that we have give folks, men, women, everyone, a platform, a space where they can talk about things. And whether they actually talk about what's happening in their personal life or not. You talked about a safe plan, Tori. Going into a game or going into Discord and talking, the folks that are being helped, you may never know that you're helping. You just think that you have a friend online and that you are comfortable talking to them and they're comfortable talking to you. You may never know the impact that you're having. We've talked about the impact that we know of in TROA that we're having, but there's no way to calculate the help that all of us are contributing to creating a safer community that with the hope that we are saving lives, some that we know we're saving, but we're still having, one is one too many, and we have tens of thousands that die by suicide in America every year, almost 1 million worldwide. So just keep building those connections, and the life that you save absolutely may be your own.
All right. Any last words before I go into the closing by the panel?
No, I think this was a really impactful and empowering conversation. And, I hope more people are able to join this one, join TROA in the future and get a really solid understanding about the work in which we're doing. It takes a community.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us for today's episode of Raven's Whispers. If today's conversation resonated with you, I have one request. Share it. Talk about it. You never know who may be silently fighting a battle that no one else can see. One conversation can open a door. One whisper can remind someone they matter. Here at TROA, we believe that communities save lives, not because of the games we play, but because of the people who choose to stand beside us. If gaming has ever helped you through a difficult time, we'd love to hear your story. Together, we can show the world that connection, compassion, and community truly make a difference. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and remember, at Raven's Whispers, we're changing lives one conversation and one whisper at a time. I'm Mark Peterson, along with Christopher Allen and Tori McNeil. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.
Hey, shields in line, brothers, sisters, we bind with time. From hearth to hall, from field to fjord, we stand as one, the realms of Asgard.